Hello, good morning, and welcome to Morning Brew here on Labour Social. I'm Graham Hughes. It is Friday, the 26th of January 2024. That went quick, didn't it? No, it didn't. January goes on forever. Right, so welcome to the new updated Morning Brew. We're now streaming at 4K, so I don't know if the frame rate's going to be any good or if there's going to be any problems with the stream. I don't know, but we're going to be talking a little bit, first of all, about Michelle Mone and her terrible husband, Doug Barrowman, mostly because they've had their assets frozen. So let's dive into this, okay? So what's happened is £75 million of assets have been frozen for Michelle Mone, Conservative peer, member of the House of Lords, for life, lifetime lawmaker in this country for life, for services to crime, maybe, I don't know. And her husband, Doug Barrowman, these assets have been frozen. Or restrained by a court order. They include a 6-bedroom townhouse in Belgravia, an Isle of Man country estate, and 15 bank accounts with Coutts, Seahor and Co. and Goldman Sachs International. The court order, contested by Mone and Barrowman, followed an application, consented to by Mone and Barrowman. This is important. We'll get back to it in a moment. Under the proceeds, following an application by the Crown Prosecution Service, under the Proceeds of Crime Act. Thank you very much to Sarah saying have a coffee on me. I do sound like I need one this morning. I've got some tea. Should I pour some tea before I go any further? I seem to be having trouble malfunctioning. Getting the words out. Anyway, the investigation is related to the alleged PPE fraud by PPE Medpro, the consortium owned by Doug Barrowman, which apparently had nothing to do with Michelle Mone at all, even though she was married to the person behind it. Something that they denied to everyone for years, and then said, "Oh no, we were only lying to the press." No, you were lying to everyone. That's who you were lying to. Everyone. With contracts from the UK taxpayer worth over £200 million. Interesting that the Taxpayers Alliance haven't much to say about this. You know, if it was a single mother on benefits claiming £2 more than she should a week, they would be going cock-a-loop. It would be front page of all the main newspapers that they own and run and tell what to write. Obviously, they're being investigated as well by the National Crime Agency, which is probing allegations of conspiracy to defraud, fraud by false representation, and bribery, which both of them deny. The government sued PPE Medpro in December 2022, claiming inadequate protective gowns, and PPE Medpro denies the allegations. PPE Medpro was just invented in the May of 2020, and within a few weeks of it being invented, suddenly it had this massive contract for over £200 million. And there was for masks and gowns, the gruesome twosome of Michelle Mone and her horrible husband, Doug Barrowman, took £60 million profit for themselves because, you know, it was a big risk having that government contract. Anyway, so what happened? Well, they supplied the masks. I think the masks were all right. The gowns, however, were only single bagged. Now, if you had been a PPE supplier for the last, 20, 30 years, you would know that hospital gowns must be double bagged. They didn't know this because they had never done this before. And so they wasted over £130 million of taxpayers' money on gowns that weren't fit for use in the NHS, causing people to die. Like, let's not beat around the bush here. These people shouldn't be just having their assets frozen. They should be on trial right now for some kind of corporate manslaughter charge because people died because of their greed and ineptitude. They couldn't even get defrauding they couldn't even get it right. Do you know what I mean? If they'd somehow given people the correct, given the NHS the correct gowns, or the correctly packaged gowns, I should say, then, they might have got away with it. Tory sleaze, £60 million of taxpayers' money. Anyway, I'll go on. The thing is, Mone admitted in a BBC interview last month, was it? It was last month, wasn't it? In December, benefiting £60 million of profit. £60 million in profit from PPE sales during the pandemic, and previously lying to journalists about her involvement. Lying to journalists. She lied to everyone. I didn't ask her. Right. So this idea that if a journalist asked her, it was okay to lie. But if I had asked her, she would have told me the truth. Oh, piss off. I mean, come on. How thick do they think we are? As thick as them, obviously. Anyway, the court order allows the couple to sell or rent parts of their property portfolio, but place restrictions on specific assets, which I'll come to in a moment. The restraint orders the restraint orders that are sought during criminal investigations can lead to asset confiscation. It's just frozen at the moment. Confiscation upon conviction. And the restrained assets include a Belgravia property, 9 Glasgow properties, a Ballachew and the Ballachew estate on the Isle of Man, 2 Coots bank accounts, 3 C. Hoare & Co.'s bank accounts, and 10 private wealth management accounts with Goldman Sachs International are covered by the order. Wow. Now, what's really disturbing about all this is it looks like this 75 million isn't like more money than they can possibly afford to lose. That's how rich these people are. These people who have taken £60 million off the taxpayer to provide 130 million, to waste 130 million pounds on gowns that don't work in the middle of a pandemic. The order, what's about here? The order permits the sale of one property, subject to the CPS notification, while rental income from the others is not restrained. So the one property is the sale of the one in Belgravia, which is worth nearly £10 million. They're trying to sell it for 25 million at the moment. And the properties in Scotland, in Glasgow, they can't sell them, but they can rent them out in the interim. The order can be adjusted based on the asset's value. So if they go down below 65 million, they'll be looked at again. If they go above 85 million, they'll be looked at again. And the December order replaced an interim order obtained by the Crown Prosecution Service in May, which included entities like LM, Lady Mone, Yachts Limited. The current order excludes these entities. So basically, the sailing yacht, which was bought by Mone and Barrowman in during the second COVID summer of 2021, is now listed for sale for €7.95 million. Nice work if you can get it. Oh my God. What do these people do? I mean, the one time that they actually had to do something, like actually give something back to society, they messed it up as badly as anyone could possibly mess that kind of thing up. And they took 60 million for themselves. 60 million pounds in the middle of a pandemic. The economic shock of which we're going to be living with for a very, very long time. The economic shock of the global credit crunch still hasn't been shifted from the United Kingdom. The economic shock of Brexit, austerity, the Tory mini budget. I mean, if you think that Keir Starmer and the team at Labour are going to turn this all around in 5 years, it's a bit of a tall order. It is a very tall order. And it's quite interesting. People going, oh, but when people are asked in Labour about the EU, when we're going to rejoin the EU, they just bat away the question. They say, oh, it's not going to happen. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I'd say, because it's not the number one thing on people's minds at the moment. The number one thing is the economy. It's as simple as that. It is as simple as that. I wish it wasn't, I wish we were, worried about the fact that we're falling down the global happiness index or something like that. But unfortunately, the world doesn't work that way. Nick and Diff asks, are the walls finally closing in on Mone? Well, Nick, the thing is that Barrowman and Mone, they volunteered. Well, they didn't volunteer, but they consented to this freezing of their assets. And that kind of makes me feel like they've probably got other assets that are worth as much or if not more than the 75 million. Because don't forget, they already had a metric F ton of money before this. This isn't like something new that, suddenly they were living on the breadline and then the nice people at the government came along and said, hey, would you like £60 million for making a few phone calls and getting us some not fit for purpose PPE. Oh, not fit for purpose PPE. Oh, that's our speciality. We can do that. This is worse than Victorian times. At least there were a lot of philanthropists then. Yeah, Gary, you're right. There were people who actually seemed to care about society a bit more during the Victorian era. We give the Victorian era a lot of jib because obviously you had child slavery, effectively, kids working down the mines here in Durham. We had kids going up chimneys and working from the age of 8, never seeing the sun again. I mean, it was pretty horrible. But the Victorian era, when it ended around the turn of the 20th century, they got rid of all that. It was the Victorians who got rid of child servitude. It was the Victorians that brought in the fact that kids should go to school and that women should have a bit more rights. I know they didn't bring in the vote for women, but the situation for the people of the United Kingdom was much better at the end of the 19th century than it was at the beginning. That's not the situation for the people who were under the yoke of the British. That's a different story entirely, because at the beginning of the century, slavery was still a thing. And then at the end of the century, colonialism was a big thing. Getting better, and then it was, oh no, scramble for Africa. It'll get worse. Anyway. Pollinator says, no point in Labour trying to rejoin the EU straight away, lose next election because they ignore the countless crises, housing, NHS, economy, environment, etc., only for the Tories to cancel those plans. Exactly. We need to make it so that Labour not only have a solid... People saying, oh, the best thing would be if Labour only got a hung parliament and they had to go into coalition with the Lib Dems. And I'm like, no. Why would that be the best thing? They wouldn't be able to decide anything. Do you know what I mean? They'll be arguing about the crossing the T's and dotting the I's. At the moment, I'm like, okay, look, I am happy for there to be a significant Labour majority in the next election, and for them to set things up so that the Tories literally can't win ever again. And they can do that very, very simply by changing the electoral system so it's fairer. The Tories want to change the electoral system so it's less fair because they think that's going to buy them more votes. So the redistricting that they've done, the changes to the boundaries of the constituencies, the fact that we need voter ID, and the fact that they're now re-enfranchised millions of people from abroad thinking they're all going to vote Tory. I don't think they will. I think this is going to be a bit like the voter ID thing, where it might actually backfire on the Tory party, because I don't think they understand how pissed off Brits who live abroad are about Brexit, because so many Brits live either in Europe or have had their pensions slashed because of the incompetence of the Tory party. So I don't think they're going to win that many extra seats. I don't know, but they are doing, and you should know about this, that the Conservatives are making a concerted effort to reach out to people living in other countries who have, I think you're allowed to vote in the constituency where you last lived in the United Kingdom. So they're looking for people who are in marginal constituencies or constituencies that they think they're going to lose. I mean, it looks like, looking at the polls, they're all going to be marginal by the time, the next election's over. But obviously the polls will converge nearer the time of the election. But even so, the Tories seem to be looking out for people to join their crusade to make everything horrible forever and ever. Thank you very much to Yorosh for the €10 super chat. That's why the tax the rich and they will leave argument is so ridiculous. The rich that keep siphoning money, public money, and paying no taxes, those rich, let them leave. Well, exactly. I mean, this is the thing, isn't it, of late stage capitalism, that all your profits are privatized and all your losses are socialized. They do believe in socialism when it's their finances on the line. I mean, they're all for bankruptcy. Those are bankruptcy rules that we have in these countries. Yeah, they love them. That's essentially the government going, oh, don't worry about all that money that you owe. We'll just write that off. Don't worry about that. We'll just get the taxpayer to bail it out, Wow. Hard Brexit isn't something that can be ignored for party political expediency. Well, I don't think it's going to be. I don't think they're not going to do anything about it. I do think that they are going to foster a closer relationship with Europe. That's something that they've said on multiple occasions. The idea of going into this next election and digging up the corpse of Brexit and parading it on the streets isn't a vote winner. We know it's not a vote winner. And there's a lot of people going, oh, well, we'll make no difference and more people want to rejoin. Yes, we do. But we've got to get over this first hurdle first. We have to get the Tories out because no matter what it is we want, whether it's UBI, PR, closer relations with the EU, the end to the offshore banning of wind farms. Oh God, onshore wind farms. How are onshore wind farms banned in this country in the middle of a climate crisis? Jesus. And the wee small donkey. Yeah, so you got all these things, but none of them are going to be able to even get started, even 1% of those things with the Tories in power. We need them out of power. And also, we need them to lose really badly because we need to show what happens when a government F's up this badly. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's got to be shown to be like, don't do that. Don't go all the way over there. And yeah, it does wind me up a little bit when people start going, oh, they're just so bad at each other. And I'm looking at them going, so you think that Boris Johnson, who during COVID had over a dozen house parties with his mates, all snorting coke off off each other and having sex in cupboards and spaffing wine up the walls, while you couldn't visit your nan. You know what I mean? Like that's equivalent to Starmer, who was a human rights lawyer. I was reading a thing about the death penalty still on the BBC because there's been someone put to death in Oklahoma in America in the most horrific way possible. It's like nitrogen. It was injected with nitrogen. I mean, oh my God, what is wrong with these people who want the death penalty? But it goes through the countries that have the death penalty. And in 1999, over 100 countries had the death penalty. Now it's less than 50. And one of the reasons for that, or, actually carrying it out, one of the reasons for that is people like Keir Starmer, who went around the world advocating for the end of the death penalty. That guy saved the lives of hundreds of people who would have otherwise died. And yeah, some of them were scumbags. Some of them were absolute scumbags and should spend the rest of their lives in jail and never get out. Some of them were innocent. Some of them were condemned to death and would have been put to death had Keir Starmer not, for free, given his time and expertise in international law and, the horrific nature of the death penalty and how it doesn't work as a deterrent from anything. In the same way that threatening to send people to Rwanda is not a deterrent to anything. Putting those two people, Boris Johnson, who rang up his mate to get he gave his mate the address of a journalist so he could be beaten up. This guy who cheated on his wife while she was getting treated for cancer, was it? I don't know if that's actually true. I think there was a bit of a timeline mismatch there. But basically, we know he was cheating on his wife with Jennifer Tory, who he gave £127,000 to for IT lessons while he was banging her on the family couch. What a charmer! This man who used to burn £50 notes in front of homeless people when he was part of the Bullingdon Club in Oxford. This braying arsehole who sold Brexit to the heart of thinking because he said, this boosterism, this idea that Britain can stand alone, and people fell for it. It's absolutely horrible shitbag of a man. This man who won't even admit how many children he's got. Yeah, he's just as bad as Keir Starmer, who was made a knight for his services as director of public prosecution, putting terrorists behind bars. I mean, just or let's say, Liz Truss and Yvette Cooper. Yeah, they're just the same if you think about it. One is a really person who's completely on top of the game, absolutely across the board, really good and punchy at like explaining what's going on and why the Tories are so bad at what they're doing and all that. And the other one's Yvette Cooper, obviously. Come on. They're not all the same. They're really, really not all the same. And you know what? Even if they were, I'd rather have a change of scenery, thank you very much. The Tories are very good at going, oh, well, I've only been in charge for the last year or so. I'm like, no, you haven't. You've been in charge for the last 14 years. 14 years of Tory government, and that's why our economy has not grown in 14 years. Why foreign direct investment has gone off a cliff. Why people are suffering from Victorian illnesses. Why people are drilling their own teeth. Why the rivers are full of shit. Tories. They couldn't. I wouldn't trust them to run a bath. Never mind a country. One of the biggest economies in the world, apparently. We used to be, anyway. How do they work out your constituency if you're living abroad? I think it was your last known address. That's what they're going to use. Wouldn't it be ironic if Ukraine joins the EU and ends up being the country who helps the UK rejoin? Yeah, that'd be great. Our army would now fill Manchester United footy ground. So sad it's shrunk so far. We'll be talking about this later today on the show at 1 o'clock, the agenda, with me and Phil Morehouse. We'll be talking about this idea that we're going to be conscripted. And talking of that, let's head over to the papers, the paper review. On the letters on the side. I know I feel a bit more. I feel like the frame rate's a bit not as good as it was. I might have to look at that. But the text, it looks a lot nicer. It used to look a bit fuzzy. That's way better. Anyway, over to the newspapers. So we got Isabel Oakeshott at the top here. This horrible, privately educated dingbat. She's a huge Brexiteer. Don't know what she does for a living, except talk bollocks. And she gets paid for that, apparently. I talk bollocks. I don't get paid for it. Super chats are open. Isabel Oakeshott saying, feckless Britain is too woke to fight. We'll lose the next war. Too woke to fight. What you mean, too woke to fight against Nazis, love? Is that what you mean? Yeah? Anyway, and then they talk about this, the guy who murdered 3 people in Nottingham, who has been sectioned, basically, is not going to jail under the Mental Health Act. And the family is just not very happy about that, which is fair enough. And police chief has blood on his hands over the stabbing, and the young victim's mother condemns the investigation. And the triple killer has been sent to a high security hospital, from whence I hope he'll never get out. And number 10 is calling for Post Office Act over a second IT scandal. That's on the yellow bit there on the eye. And also, and Labour's tax trap. Starmer warned he must reverse Tory tax cuts or squeeze UK public services. And this is something that we talked about on this channel before, but Phil's all over this, talking about how the Tories are in the process of setting traps for Labour. So if Labour say we're not going to create any more, we're not going to cut any taxes. We're not going to add any more taxes. Then the government now can say, okay, well, we're going to cut all these taxes now. So by the time that Labour get in, there's going to be not enough money in the coffers for them to pay for the things that Labour want to do, like the 28 billion pounds a year they want to spend on the green invest, not spend. Sorry, I misspoke. The 28 billion pounds a year they want to invest in this country and its green revolution, which is really important. The Mirror there saying about the Nottingham and the family's fury here, they were failed. The Guardian says the EU plan to stockpile drugs, which will worsen UK shortages. Well, it's a shame we're not part of the EU still, isn't it? Oh well, never mind. And then the Heil is this is the trial goes so much deeper than the headlines on New Acclaim podcast. It's a big advert for this new male podcast, which would be horrible people going, oh, aristocrat and her lover went on the run carrying newborn baby in little bag for life. This is a aristocratic, privately educated lunatic talking about another aristocratic, privately educated lunatic. Probably. Rebecca Camber. I'll have to look her up, see if I have to add her to the private school mafia. This is a story that happened, was it last year, was it? A horrific story of this woman who ran off with her lover and murdered her baby, which is just absolutely horrific. Which you won't go into too much this morning because, you probably just had your breakfast. And then, and then there's a little story here in The Guardian about Trump on trial yesterday for defamation suit against E. Jean Carroll. He's been found guilty of the crime already. This is just to see how much money he has to pay her. And he was given 4 minutes to talk in the court and whinge about how unfair it all was. Daily Express here. Today's tax cuts are just the start. So again, this is the Tory trap. They're going to cut a load of taxes and then say to Labour, ha ha ha, there's no money and you can't do the things that you want to do. And they hope that Britain will get even worse and more people will suffer. And then in desperation, they'll turn back to the Tories in 2029. That's the plan. They're making us all suffer. See this, see what this is, right? Let's make no bones about it. This is a fucking war crime, okay? Because you know what this is? This is collective punishment. This is the Tories collectively punishing the country for not wanting them in power anymore. Can't stress that enough. And then Daily Star with this jingoistic bullshit about people being drawn up to the military to fight Russia. No, we're not. I mean, look, realistically, if we do go to war with Russia, it's not going to last that long, one way or another. As military top brass call for citizens' army to face down Mad Vlad, 90% of us said we refuse to fight. Well, okay, but the population's 68 million. Take away the kids, I guess. So let's say 60 million, just to make things easier to work out in my head. 90% of 60 million, 10% of 60 million is 6 million. Which is more than enough. So, yeah. This is so gammony, isn't it? It's so, like, boomer. It's so boomer. This obsession with, we send them off to the war. We'll have conscription. That'll make men of them. And you're just like, oh, my God. Really? Really? Really, Grandad? And then the Metro here, no justice. And the story that I've been covering this morning in the Financial Times, court freezes Mone assets as crime agency invests PPE fraud claims, which, you can't argue with that because I don't want to. Are there new things coming along that are going to, I don't know. Anyway, I got my name come up then. That was cool. Holocaust Memorial Day tomorrow. Anyone else think what's happening in Gaza is reminiscent of the Warsaw Ghetto? Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people pointing out that this is a genocide, what's happening in Gaza at the moment. And while I will still say we shouldn't use terms like Nazis and fascists when we're talking about the government of Israel because of historical connotations there, what's been happening in Gaza and while we've all been sort of sitting here watching it unfold with absolute horror is horrific. And the thing is, one of the things said near the beginning is that like Netanyahu is we can't control him. Like we can't control him. People are screaming for Starmer to do something. Starmer's the leader of the opposition of a country that he's ignoring anyway. He's ignoring the US. He's ignoring President Biden. He's not going to listen to anyone. And I don't know really, short of military intervention into Israel, which is a nuclear power, so I wouldn't recommend it. I don't see really more what we can do. I mean, I suppose sanctions, but do sanctions work? We've had sanctions on Russia now for 2 years. It's done bugger all. They've just found other people to sell their stuff to. India, China. They sell most of their oil and coal now to China, I believe. They're not bothered. It's not a big sanctions. Oh no, don't sanction us. And I suppose in the case of Russia, they've got the manpower or person power to just keep fighting forever, even if they've got shitty weapons and no tanks. But in Israel, they have some real high tech stuff, and the people of Gaza, they don't have an army. They don't have anyone fighting on their behalf in a sort of way that can be negotiated with a treaty or anything. They just have Hamas, who couldn't give a crap about the people of Gaza and will use the people of Gaza as a giant human shield. Just everything about it is horrific and desperate and horrifying. And I hope that the people of Israel manage to topple this absolute lunatic that they've got in charge right now, Benjamin Netanyahu. And I hope he goes to jail for the rest of his life for what he's done. And I hope that these war crimes are investigated properly. And when we see and hear about stories of people holding white flags, holding, unarmed civilians being shot dead, They shot dead their own hostages. They went into Gaza to try and rescue the hostages, and so far, none of them have been rescued by military means. The only time that they got some hostages back was when they sat down and negotiated with Hamas. But they're not interested in doing that because, in the same way that Hamas don't care about the Palestinian people, really, the Israeli government don't care about Israelis, and certainly don't care about these hostages that have been taken, because if they did, they would approach this in a very different way. Anyway, look, I'm getting pulled down a rabbit hole there, but maybe we'll talk about it a bit later on today. Lots of shows today. Stop selling and maintaining the weapons. Yeah, that would be a good step forward, Mark. There is negative effect on Russian income and the ruble value because China pays in yuan. Yes, but still, the war goes on, and everyone's saying it's going to last for 5 years, and apparently we're going to have to sign up. We're going to have to be conscripted to fight Russia soon. So, yeah. Paul says I sent some threads, links on threads to add military senior officers to the private school mafia. Yes, I will do that, Paul. I'll have a look at that today, actually. Add some more names to the private school mafia. I managed to put an extra 60 on in one day because I just went through all the high court judges. They were all went to private school. What word would you describe as? What word would you use to describe the Israeli government? That's from Shane. I don't know. I think if we had Christopher Hitchens here, he'll have a very articulate word to say about them. Just utterly disgraceful. Disgraceful doesn't go far enough. Like, it is the worst people in charge of that country, at the worst possible time. In the same way that having Boris Johnson in charge of this country and Trump in charge of America during COVID was the worst people imaginable in charge of those countries, in these countries, at the worst possible time. And people died as a result. Boris Johnson has the blood of thousands on his horrible little podgy fingers. He is a horrible, horrible man who should spend the rest of his life in jail, as should Trump, as should Netanyahu, and Mone, and Barrowman, and a bunch of other people who seem to think that the laws, rules, norms, conventions are for the little people. And they can do whatever the hell they like with no consequences whatsoever. Boris, what's his name? Trump in America. He openly admitted to sexually abusing women in that Access Hollywood tape. And he also has been found guilty in a court of law. I know it was a civil case, but it was a court of law, of rape. And yet, over 100 million Americans are planning to vote for him in November. 100 million people are like, yeah, it's a rapist, but I don't mind. I wouldn't trust him with my daughter, but I'll trust him with the country. Would you trust him to look after your dog? No, not really. He'll probably let it starve to death. Be too busy playing golf, but I love him. And that's why cults are so goddamn horrific. Anyway, how many times are the Tories going to breach international law before we get economic sanctions? Says Siskin Edge. Yeah, that's a good point. The thing is, right, realistically, the EU is not going to bring sanctions against the UK for the behaviour of the Tory government. And the WTO at the moment has been neutered by America. America's not interested in the WTO upholding trade restrictions on countries and making sure that countries stick to the terms of their deals that they strike, and making sure that the MFN, the most favoured nation system, is robust, because the US have basically defunded the WTO in the same way that Trump wanted to defund NATO. He wants to destroy NATO. He wants to get rid of it, which is something that I think would be absolutely horrific, not just for the people of Ukraine, but especially for the people of Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania, who live under the threat of Russian invasion now every day. You saw that it happened in Ukraine. Why would it not happen in these tiny Baltic states? The only reason why he hasn't gone in already is because they're part of NATO. Yeah, the Zygon speech was superb. I wish every politician could be forced to watch it. And look what he's still doing to poor E. Jean Carroll. I hope she takes Trump to the cleaners. Well, the thing is, right, um, Trump, I'm going to have to wrap it up in a moment. But before I go, sorry, this isn't good news. Trump is now the Republicans' last chance to ever be in power again. It's as simple as that. Because once they are, if they don't win this in November, then they're effed. Do you know what I mean? They're as a political party, they are striven by division. They are the word is they are racked by division in their own political party, but also across the country. And people go, oh, but Trump is, if we get rid of him, then someone else will replace him. They won't. Look at DeSantis. He's about as popular as a fart in a lift. Do you know what I mean? Like, no one likes him. He doesn't have the same charisma as Trump does. No one's going to replace Trump. Bannon is going to replace him. What is Jordan Peterson? He can't. He's Canadian. Ben Shapiro, is he going to replace Trump? No. None of them are. I mean, like, Trump is a thank God he's a one-off, and if they don't win in November, they're absolutely stuffed, because you'll start seeing things like the fact that there are going to be laws coming in that will protect women's reproductive rights, so they're not going to get a chance to have a crack at that again. They'll be having looked at Project 2025, which is well worth looking up. You can I'm sure that the government will, if it's a Democrat government, will put in things to make sure that those parts of the state that aren't necessarily run directly by the president are more robust, so they can function independently and not at the behest of the executive. And so I can't see the Republicans winning ever again if they don't win this one. And don't forget, they only won in 2016 by a fluke because of the Electoral College. And so what's going to happen is they are going to throw absolutely everything they've got at getting Trump into power. So that's going to cover Facebook. It's going to cover Twitter under that Musk creep. It's going to cover like billions of dollars is going to be spent on Trump's re-election campaign, and all of the fines he's going to get for all of the bad things he's done, like not just the rape of E. Jean Carroll, but also the defamation against her over the years. Those things will be paid for by his Republican sugar daddies. So he's not going to be out of pocket by the end of all this. I don't think Trump's going to go bankrupt unless he loses the next election. Like, absolutely everything for the Republican Party and for Trump personally hinges on him winning that election, pardoning himself, bringing in Project 2025, imprisoning everyone who disagrees with him, shooting dead anyone who dares to be different, dares to be black, dares to be transgender or gay or speak a different language or be Muslim. He is going to be a fascist dictator. And he said he's going to be. He said, I'm going to be only one on the first day. On day one, I'll be a dictator. And what are you going to do in that day? I'm going to drill foil. I'm going to build a wall against the Mexicans. Ha ha ha. I'm like, that's not going to take a day, mate. Anyway, if you lose this time, I think Trump, if he avoids Father Time, will try again in 2028. I bloody hope not. I'm sick and tired of seeing his stupid fucking face every day in the news for 9 years now. 9 years. And if he wins, it'll be another 4 years after this one. That is far too much of a percentage of my life, having to see his goddamn ugly, gormless, stupid orange face every fucking day on the internet. Sorry, sorry for saying swearing. Just winds me up a little bit. But yeah, if you're not sick of seeing my stupid, gormless face, I'll be back at 1 o'clock with our friend Ben. What? No, that's later. With our friend Phil Morehouse, who'll be joining us for the agenda. And I'll be back again at 9 o'clock tonight to open up a couple of cans of beer and talk about what's been going on this week in the UK in the Labour Social. So thank you very much for the chat. Thank you very much for the super chat. And until next time, I'll say hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye.